Good to have you with us. I'm Daniel Choy for this Sunday's edition of ARIRANG News. The pendulum that often represents inter-Korean ties appears to be swinging away from threats and provocations and back toward negotiations and dialogue. A high-level delegation of North Korean officials made a special trip south of the DMZ on Saturday to attend the closing ceremony of the Incheon Asian Games. They held informal talks with South Korea's point man on inter-Korean affairs. He asked a question on everyone's minds these days. Just where is Kim Jong-un? Our Connie Kim starts us off.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has not been spotted in public for more than a month, raising speculation and questions among outsiders about possible health problems. But an insider says there's nothing to report. Kim Jong-un, who has been the North's top policymaker in charge of inter-Korean affairs since 2007, told South Korean Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae during informal talks on Saturday that the young North Korean leader was fine. Ryu said he had no reason to believe Kim Jong-un was not being forthright. In addition to meeting with Kim, Ryu also met with a man regarded as the North's second most powerful, Hwang Byung-seo. Ryu says Hwang asked him to deliver a heartfelt greeting to President Park Geun-hye. The high-level delegation from North Korea, which also included top North Korean military official Choi Dong-hae, made a rare, brief, and unexpected trip south of the border this weekend. Word that they would be attending the closing ceremony of the Asian Games in the South Korean port city of Incheon on Saturday came just one day earlier. It's raising expectations of a thaw in inter-Korean tensions. During the visit, the two Koreas agreed to hold a round of high-level talks later this month or next. Topics up for discussion could include the resumption of reunions for families separated by the Korean War and a restart of tours to North's Mount Kumgang Resort. If the high-level talks do take place, they would represent just the second of their kind since the leaderships of the two Koreas took power, the other coming in February. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Moving on to other stories, a local think tank expects the Korean economy to grow 3.6% next year. That projection from the Hyundai Research Institute is lower than the 4% forecast made by the government and central bank in July. The institute cited a number of factors in its report. Domestically, they come in the form of the strong local currency, decreasing raw materials prices, and rising household debt. Internationally, the institute says slowing global demand and growing competition with China in overseas markets are likely to keep growth down. To turn the tide, the think tank suggests that the government continue to aggressively pursue its expansionary policies. Well, Korean exporters may be battling their Chinese counterparts in overseas markets, but Korean automakers are enjoying some success in China these days. Hyundai and Kia sold their 9 millionth automobile in China last month, this after 12 years since the company entered the market. It's been a good year overall for Hyundai and Kia in China. Cumulative sales of over the first 9 months of the year were up 9.5% on year, the biggest contributing factor to their success. SUVs and compact cars. To make further inroads, Hyundai and Kia will begin introducing new models designed exclusively with Chinese drivers in mind. Around 96% of items bought by Korean shoppers from foreign sellers over the past 5 years have been purchased tax-free. The Korea Customs Service, in a report to the Finance Ministry, says that more than 35 million foreign direct purchases were made from 2009 to June this year. Among them, only 4.4% were taxed. Koreans can make a direct purchase of an item up to about $142 in value from countries other than the United States without paying taxes. The benefits only apply for those who do not attempt to resell the items for profit. The tensions in Hong Kong are starting to reach a boiling point. 1 week after mass demonstrations began calling for universal suffrage in 2017 elections, Hong Kong's chief executive took to the airwaves where he called on people to clear the streets. Our Shin Se-min reports on what could happen if they don't.
The chief executive of Hong Kong, now facing a second week of mass protests, appeared on television late Saturday evening with a message for demonstrators.
It is urgent that all entrances to government headquarters be cleared by Monday morning so that 3,000 employees can go back to work at the main office complex.
If they don't, he said local authorities and the police were prepared to take necessary actions to make sure government offices and schools reopen. While he didn't threaten force, his statement certainly sounded like an ultimatum. But Leung's words appear to have only strengthened the protesters' resolve. Hours after the announcement, thousands of people flooded out onto the six-lane road that has been the main staging ground for the past week, creating the largest gathering in days. All of it is raising the prospects of a large-scale confrontation. Protest leaders called off planned talks with government officials on Saturday following clashes that activists called organized attacks. The activists have in recent days made two demands: that Chief Executive Leung step down from his post and that they be granted universal suffrage in 2017 elections that will determine their next leader. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
As you can tell from the picture, the police aren't armed to the teeth, so hopefully there will be a peaceful resolution to this matter. Well, elsewhere around the world, panic spread throughout New York Liberty International Airport in the United States over the weekend, as a sick passenger traveling from Brussels was feared to be infected with Ebola. The 35-year-old Liberian man who was traveling with his daughter began vomiting during a flight. Officials from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention quickly responded when the plane touched down, taking him and his daughter to the hospital. Officials there say the man's symptoms are consistent with another minor and treatable condition unrelated to Ebola. Him and his daughter have since been released. Well, if you've watched an opera or a musical recently here in Korea, you may have been more impressed by the costumes worn by the performers than the story itself sometimes. Stage costumes, in fact, are actually now taking on a bigger role in Korean productions. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
One of Korea's best-known folk tales and love stories, Chunhyangjeon, has been reborn in the form of a ballet. And it's the costumes that are sticking out in the performance. It took more than 6 months to complete the stage outfits, which took a classical ballet twist on the hanbok, Korea's traditional dress.
Hanbok contains the spirit of Koreans. The materials and colors that hanbok is made of exudes the spirit. I wanted to show those features of hanbok to the world.
A battle of warriors dressed in red and blue grabs the audience's attention. The silhouette of the costumes accentuate the dancers' waists and hip lines, adding to the impact of their choreographed dance.
I tried to emphasize the confrontation mode by differentiating their outfits. The costumes of one side are inspired by Western clothing, while the others are inspired by Oriental dresses.
And for the Korea National Opera's production of the Shakespearean love story Romeo and Juliet, a globally renowned designer is in charge of the stage costumes. As costumes are now taking more important roles in breathing life into the characters of a performance, more production money is being poured into creating costumes that perfectly fit the opera's story and music.
The most important thing about costumes for the theatre is that they tell the audience about the character. They should tell you the age of the character, and the status, and the class.
And thanks to these elaborate costumes that are taking center stage, audiences not only get to enjoy dramatic performances, but also vivid and bold fashions under the theater spotlight. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Now the weather in select parts of Korea, strong easterly winds are expected as a result of the indirect effects of Typhoon Panphon, which is lashing Japan's small southern islands even as we speak. Tomorrow, clear skies are expected nationwide, but brace yourself for a nippy morning and evening with temperatures dipping below 15 degrees Celsius. And now let's check out the weather conditions in your neck of the woods and around the world. Well, that's all from us for this hour. If you're tuning in from outside of Korea, have a good start to your day. And if you're watching in from Korea, I believe you had a very exhausting week, and now you're trying to recover from the euphoria of the Asian Games. Well, you did have a 3-day weekend. Hopefully you are recharged by now. If you're working on the weekends, well, don't work too hard. We have more updates coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time, so do join us then. From all of us here at ARIRANG News, thank you for watching.